Short Story Writing Year 9 English 2018. To write a short story, you need to think of your plot. A plot is a sequence of events that unfold as we read. Events are selected by the author to maintain the interest of the reader. Short stories usually have a limited time frame. Therefore, the settings need to be limited and the characters need to be limited. Ideally, you should have 2 or 3 main characters. One is your protagonist, the hero. The second, the antagonist, the enemy. You can have a few minor characters as well. You can be creative in how you structure your plot. For example, you could write about previous or future events. You can also use the flashback structure. For your assignment, you're going to write an imaginative narrative, and the structure for that looks like this raised triangle. We begin with the orientation, which is the start of the story. It's the area where you introduce your setting and your characters. So you develop where your story takes place, who your characters are, when the story takes place, and why it takes place. You also select the theme and your conflict. Then you proceed with your complication, and these are a series of events that rise up the triangle that create conflict and bring out the theme of the story. These complications start off small and increase in complexity, intensity, what we call the rising action. It's this sequence of events where your main characters, your protagonist and your antagonist, react to the complications and the conflicts. So think of this rising action as a small pebble. The problem starts off small, and then it increases to a rock, and the problem gets more complex and intense. The rock becomes a boulder, where the problem becomes more intense and complex. The protagonist is against the antagonist, and we come to the climax. The climax is the turning point, the most intense moment, either mentally or in action. After the climax, we then fall down our ladder with falling action. And this is all the action that follows the climax. The triumphs, the sadness, the joys, the wins, the losses. And we finish with the resolution, where the conflict is resolved and the tying together of loose ends. This is basically known as the happy ending, the sad ending, or a cliffhanger. So in summary, while listening to this PowerPoint, you should have made notes. I have done it for you to give you an example. The sequence of events that unfold is the plot. These events take place in a short time, usually in a single setting. The structure of a narrative. We have the orientation, the setting, characters, the where, when, who, the complication and the conflict. This is developed as rising tension. We start with the pebble problem, the stone problem, the rock problem, the boulder problem, to our climax of the conflict. Then we have the falling action, the aftermath of the climax, the relief, the joy, the sadness, the triumph, the celebration, the twist, and the resolution, a happy ending or a cliffhanger. Settings and plots can be creative. You can write it as a flashback. You start in the middle of the story, of the complication, and you flash back to how it all began, when it was just a pebble or a stone. Then you return to the action, stone becoming a boulder, more intense and complex, to the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. Or you can start your story with the conflict, and you move into your rising action, your climax, your falling action, and your resolution. Or you can start with harmony, and you move into the conflict, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. Here is a chart and a template for you to follow. You will get a copy of this in class. The first step is to establish the theme of your story. Is your theme going to be about family or love, survival, power? We will look at theme later. This is your orientation. Another word is your exposition, where your story is set, the mood of the story, the climate, the characters of your story. Then you should outline your rising conflict, your rising action, the first conflict, the second conflict, the third conflict. Each one contributes to the other and increases in intensity until you reach your climax. Then you have your falling action and your resolution. By the way, author is your name, and the title is the title of your story.